again, we'll bring Sulaf back, and she's got a few different powders that she's got that she can demonstrate how the machine works, that she was saying that she can take through the airports without too many raised eyebrows. So yeah, we'll have a bit of a demonstration of that, and then if you've got any questions, sort of start asking, really. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's the instrument. This is the first powder. So just place it, and then I'll say scan. The only issue is to build the library. If it's not in the library, you won't know. And it's cornstarch, and this is cornstarch.
Boo.
No drugs tonight. Next time. This one is another unknown powder. I would scan it as well, less than a minute. Cellulose. This is cellulose as well.
So the bag doesn't make any difference at all?
No, it can go through transparent, not white things. This one, I can tell what is it without the instrument, but with the instrument, if I put it and just click scan, it's sugar. And yeah, this is sugar. If I have a tablet, that's critical. This is low dosage, it's only 10 milligrams. So what it will detect, if I put it here, I can go through the blister packaging, provided it's transparent. So if I go and scan, it will show me, oh, sorry. It will show me cornstarch. Actually, the reason is that starch is the major excipient, major additive in this tablet. And it's only 10 milligrams, it's really low dose. And this is one issue, the sensitivity is not very sensitive. You can't get everything in a small size. Take it, if something in this case, take it back to the lab. So this is not an alternative to classical instruments, but it can does initially the job faster, in case you have high dosage form. Any question? Or?
Would there be, if there's a film across the tablets, would that impact? Because sometimes they have like a
coating.
The gastric coated ones.
Yeah, with this instrument, no, it's not a problem. But with the initial, the first two, the FTIR and Drummond, yeah, it might mask the tablet. So you'll need to scratch the film. But this one, it works perfectly well. We've tested it on Viagra tablets, which are really thick coated from the internet as well, and it was able to distinguish the authentic from the counterfeit. Yeah.
First of all, that's a basic bit of kit you've got. If you mix, say, cornstarch and sugar half and half, what's it going to detect?
If you will get an unknown match, we did this. If you've built up in the library, what we used to do, not yet with this instrument, but with previous instruments, is to prepare from 10 to 90% mixtures and see what it will detect. And in some cases, it gives a match to the 50-50, 60-40. And yeah. Yeah.
Another question. You were talking about the classification of drugs and which ones are controlled substances and which ones aren't.
Yeah.
And it seems from what you're saying that the controlled substances are very specific molecules. So if you mess about with the molecule one bit, it's not a controlled substance.
Yeah.
Is there a problem with making the kind of the base molecule legal, unless it's for some sort of medical purposes?
Like the base molecule, it's not legal, so.
No, but what I mean is
can you make the derivatives of it?
Illegal. Yeah, and in the States they have an interesting law. They have analogs law, but we don't have it here.
Right.
I wish this happened. It wouldn't have been, but here we ban by molecule. This is the thing. But there is, I don't know if it will be introduced analog law. So.
There's obviously quite a lot of people making these kind of things. Is there any good that comes from it? Do they ever hit upon something that's like, wow, wish we thought of that?
Not sure, it might be, but like for example, cannabis might have a medicinal use. A lot of studies have been coming on the medicinal use of cannabis and how it's good for terminally ill pain. But no one, even for cannabis, no one explored it. But with the UK drug law, when you have things class A, B, and C, class A, no medicinal use. When you go a little bit down, you'll find medicinal use. For example, with amphetamine, it might have a good medicinal use. Or some derivatives, they're good for cancer patients. A lot have been used, like morphine derivatives or some tramadol, which is like for bone pain used. It's a morphine derivative. But these, they've not been explored yet, the benefits of them. Not a lot.
I mean, when a compound is altered to kind of create a high, how do the producers know or understand how that altering will kind of create a certain effect or that sort of thing? Do we have any understanding of, we've got people trying these things or what have you, or is it more a hope that you can alter something slightly and it will create a certain effect?
Yes, there is some, like not all the compounds are altered from zero.
Yeah.
A lot of these compounds, they were promoted, like aminoendanes, they were promoted for medicinal use and they failed clinical trials, failed to make it to the market as a medicine. There's as well like 3 reference books, phenethylamine, a story I loved, tryptamine, a story I loved, and by Professor Shulgin in America. And he synthesizes the drugs and they're tried as well. So a lot is dug from there. But nothing is confirmed yet. It depends on the study. Some are just designed to make money. Yeah.
You mentioned the harmful effects. How do you compare those to, say, the harmful effects of alcohol, which we know is...
Alcohol, there is enough studies on it. So it might be more toxic, but people are aware when they're taking alcohol, at least, and there is enough studies to say what is toxic, what dose is it. These legal highs, the issue is that they get abused in a variety of different ways and with mixture of substances. So in classical, in a way, when you go to drug forums and this, you don't see just one drug being abused. Sometimes it's a mixture, sometimes with alcohol. So this is why it's difficult to do as well, carry out all these studies.
It's really interesting to talk about the forums, and I was just wondering if there have been many studies that are actually kind of recruiting people and doing any sorts of trials.
Ethics.
How will you get ethical? Just to analyze them, you need to go through a series of licenses.
So you said that the American laws are slightly different to the ones here. I mean,
there is analog law, so you control by analog. So a list of these drugs are banned.
And do you think that that's more appropriate way to go in the future, or is there?
What is interesting is the New Zealand approach. They just introduced it. Is that anyone who wants to, they go to temporary class list, but anyone who wants to sell such a legal high online has to demonstrate by some sort of testing, simple test or animal testing, that it is safe. Once it's safe, they can sell it. Then the websites selling them can do the studies and demonstrate. At least it's not giving adverse health consequences to the user. So that was more interesting approach.
Yes.
What do you make of these? The e-cigarettes?
So nicotine, caffeine, nicotine.
Well, I don't actually know what chemicals
Okay.
Where did you buy it?
What cigarette is it?
Some bloke in the corner up the road.
Sorry, I thought it's a normal. What cigarette is it? Or
Sorry?
what cigarette is it? Electronic? Or?
Yeah, it's the replacement cigarette. It's got some sort of liquid in it which makes smoke glands up. I don't know what it is.
Done what research?
Any opinion, idea?
No idea about this.
Well, I guess it's a replacement for a drug that's on the market that people can buy freely. So what you're doing is you're taking the nicotine out,
Yeah.
and putting it in something else.
Yeah.
You're not getting the burning. You're not getting it's kind of like removing some of the side effects, I suppose.
Yeah, because you don't have the tar and carbon monoxide.
But
In
isn't
theory.
it a similar thing with controlled drugs and uncontrolled drugs, and there's always someone trying to sell.
It's interesting, but I've not seen a study. Maybe there is studies and didn't see it regarding the adverse effect from taking.
I think the problem is at the moment is they don't actually know because
Not
they've
sure.
exploded on the market.
Yeah.
The whole thing is that, you know, obviously it is nicotine that's in there and that's essentially all that's in there.
Yeah.
And they're able to vary the amount of dose that's in the...
that said, the bottles do have a toxic standpoint.
What is?
I'm really worried
Yeah.
about that,
But it's, yeah, it depends on what level probably it's at, the same as anything.
There actually have been quite a lot of studies on it. So like, you can.
On the
I
restaurant?
think I've been going to send the food.
that should probably be.
Yeah, that's part of it, is they don't know what the long-term effects are of...
But you'll need ethical approval. Once there is human participant, it will be a longer procedure. You'll need ethical approval to go to study the effects. We've investigated counterfeit tobacco and illicit tobacco. We're still processing a lot of the data, but we found a lot of physicochemical differences clear between them. And the tar content in counterfeit tobacco, it's a lot higher. So they are more toxic. So.
The same things like salvia and
Salvia is a hallucinogen.
yeah, but it's
It's
kind
really-
of sold as a replacement for marijuana, which is
Yeah, what I doubt, what happens with salvia, in most cases, well, it had impurities. So caffeine was added at once. One time theophylline, which is a bronchodilator for asthma and it does heartbeats for as side effects, increased heartbeats, was found.
I guess I'm sort of interested because see, marijuana is dubious and illegal. People argue various things.
Yeah.
You know, it's probably safer than alcohol is. I guess if people are seeking to have some kind of high or to change their mood in some way, is it not better to discover something that is safe and do that? Rather than prove everything
Yeah.
is unsafe.
Yeah, true. The safety depends on few things. The first thing is that what dose you're taking, are you aware of the side effects, what is taken with. So in real life, maybe, I don't know, water can be not safe if I misuse it. But at least with marijuana, there is enough studies. You can predict what toxic effects it have, what doses, similar with alcohol. But with legal highs, it's completely new molecules. The other thing, it would have been easier if you have one molecule in a drug as it's advertised. But there's always complexity. Elemental analysis as well shows a series. In some cases, you would find asbestos or lead, which is carcinogenic. So that is really another area to explore.
So people
Sorry.
Is there a danger that the general public might have a misconception about these materials and assume that because they're legal, they're therefore safer than drugs which are banned?
Yeah, this is the advertisement of them. They're legal and the public perceives them as safe. And a lot of the teenage population, they use them this way because it's fashion. They're fancy colors and shapes advertised on the internet. And the names are like Blurberry, Pink Champagne, something attractive to the...
So, I mean, do you know of any move, any sort of government move to make people more aware of the dangers of these materials?
There is the early warning system that we have, but it's not targeted. There is a website for the government, Talk to Frank, that puts a little bit on drugs, but not any of that I know.
They were talking about doing a big campaign on the wind up to all the music festivals throughout the summer. They were talking about putting together some kind of campaign to target exactly this so that people would be more aware and... Yeah.
There is on the music festival websites this summer as well, because a lot of the samples we have from Glastonbury Festival, so... Sorry, yeah.
You were talking about the legislation in New Zealand, because when I used to live there, I was actually surprised that lots of these legal highs were actually sold in shops, like just
head shops.
Yeah, like they are like just normal, you could go into and buy coffee in a coffee shop, and there would be a corner with like legal highs.
Okay,
And I was surprised because there was nothing written on it. For law, I guess there's a law in New Zealand as well that you have to have all the ingredients on food.
Yeah.
But on this legal highs, there was nothing. You had no clue actually what was in it. So I was really surprised the legislation would be.
It just came this year. Earlier this year, the legislation, and they have a big problem as us of legal highs as well.
Because there were so many shops that we just
because
they were outlet shops. It was impressive. A couple of years ago.
I know it was just this year the study, but a lot of the drugs as well, like ivory wave, was found hugely in New Zealand, and so.
One of the slides, if I've got this right, indicated that one of the drugs or one of the illegal highs you were talking about was responsible for 16 deaths over a 3-year period. Have I got that right?
Yeah, the Dr. Death so far report.
Yes,
and it has been banned lately. Methadone a lot more.
So how many more are we talking about? So methadone.
Methadone and cathinones, because they've been 2005 there was methylone banned. 2007 methadone emerged, and then all the cathinones followed. There's not official studies, but 2 years ago there was a study. 60% of people who took cathinones, they suicided by mechanical ways. So either strangle themselves or blood on the walls or jump in front of the train. The stimulant effect is really high. Sorry,
did you say 60% of people who took them?
Yeah.
Which drug was that?
Which drug?
Cathinones. Cathinones are bad now.
60% of people who took cathinones committed suicide?
Mechanical suicide.
Really?
That was the study done.
Okay.
So
it
was in 2011 done.
I'm a solicitor, and I do a lot of people who take drugs. I know.
Cathinones were really bad, and a lot of the cases as well. That study was done 2011 by clinical toxicologists.
I cannot believe those numbers. I know an awful lot of people who take them.
Still.
The rest of that.
The thing is that there's still no, like even in the latest United Nations report 2013, the report on novel psychoactive substances, it still assures there's no proper toxicological studies. What we get is what we have from the users forum when they talk about it, what we have from the media, mostly Daily Mail.
That well-known scientific
And what gets reported and other things, Times, Telegraph, these things. So there was still no proper study that was done because of the clinical trials. Ethical approval will be difficult to come and talk to the users and see what's happening with them. The other thing I would argue as well, this number, but this is what was reported, because a lot of the toxicology, we have two schools. One school of clinical toxicology that would look at the test, the blood test and urine, and say it took this, but one school that would treat by symptoms.
Yeah.
So in most cases, it might be the symptom this, it's labeled as methadone, and there's inside something else. So it's still a doubt. But Dr. Death, a lot of the cases, if you Google Dr. Death, a lot of the cases have died out of it.
The thing I was going to say about Dr. Death was that I come across callous of 16 deaths over 3 years. Over what? Are we talking about UK or?
No, just what was reported in the worldwide.
Worldwide?
Yeah. What was reported. It might be more, it might be less.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Because as well, the geography of abuse is not scattered in all countries. Like Europe is the most capital of designer drugs.
Yeah.
UK is higher percentage than another. Then we have New Zealand, Australia, America, a little bit in Canada. But they have problem of classical drugs rather than legal highs.
Right. So I don't want to be callous, but 16 deaths over 3 years is really not a lot. talking about that many millions of the population.
Yeah, true.
It's just that the legislation is very targeted to treat certain drug suppliers, rightly, I think, quite harshly, and the drug users are also treated very harshly all the time. The difficulty is, it seems to extend out in proportion to the harm that's actually caused in some ways. I know there are other social aspects to drug use which are a problem. But talking about alcohol, you were saying earlier that the reason that even though it may be harmful, it's not considered to be harmful because everybody knows what they're doing when they open the bottle of beer and drink it. But that's because you've got concentration printed on the side, you know exactly what you're doing when you drink that bottle of beer. You know the purity, you know there aren't side effects, you know there's nothing else in there. I mean, you may not be able to comment on this, but is the drug legislation itself not causing more harm in terms of failing to regulate, to control what people are actually getting, what people are able to get?
Surely it's more of a
So I would,
problem than a science problem.
Yeah.
So the problem is people like to alter their state of mind, and we're not addressing that by giving them something that is controlled and available and non-harmful.
Yeah.
What we're doing is we're telling them they can't have stuff that is harmful.
We're telling them they can't have some stuff that's harmful.
I'm sure drugs that alter your state of mind could be produced by big companies without the death.
That's the solution to the problem, isn't it? Yeah. If you could come up with something that alters people's minds, that gets them happy and makes them go to parties. And
Dr. Nutt, Dr. Nutt, the former drug scientist, he's talking about a sort of synthetic alcohol that you could drink, get drunk, take a pill, and then half an hour later you're sober again.
okay, that's good.
Do you know anything about it?
No. So, I didn't know about it. But what I would say initially with the legislation, it's better if it's based on like a proper assessment of the pharmacology and toxicity of drugs. Unfortunately, we do not, I would agree with you, unfortunately we do not have it. And the other thing, if you look at the statistics, a lot of people die from horses than drugs, and horses are not banned, so you cannot launch a ban.
Or paracetamol.
Yeah, or paracetamol as well. It's still the safest drug, but it's the most harmful if it's abused. So, but the issue is like, at least if it's controlled. If I take, for example, imagine I'm taking Heinz ketchup and there's mayonnaise inside. This is the issue.
But then, like in Holland, where you have a coffee shop and you can buy marijuana or hash. But then, I consider it safer because you know what you're buying. It's not buying from the guy next door that you don't know what he's happening with. You don't get marijuana, you get whatever.
Yes, so if you could buy pills with methadone from the news agent, then does that not become a better substance to take than something that you buy with things there?
Well, the problem that was in the New Zealand fact that you didn't know what was inside because there was nothing. I mean, it was like whatever in champagne.
Well, then is the problem with control rather than with the actual substance itself?
So what you're saying is then prohibition doesn't work because all you're doing is diversifying the legal market.
Yeah.
Whereas if you didn't have prohibition, what you would actually have is a control where you'll be able to go and buy your tobacco, buy your alcohol, buy your cannabis. And as a consequence, it would, anyway, or whatever. So the drug of choice. So then that's about what you're saying.
Although that said, if you take it into a very slightly different medium, potentially guns with the Americans, who guns are legal and very, very controlled, a lot more of them die from gunshot than in England, where no one has it. So if the drug is dangerous enough, it can go the other way.
No, there's an interesting issue about the purity. 3 years ago, there was a case, I think Brighton, and this person took cathinone, it's labeled cathinone, and then he went into sedation, he slept, a little bit of seizures. then the emergency department, they saw the package is labeled cathinone. Cathinone is a stimulant. You would give a benzodiazepine, antidepressant. And they gave him benzodiazepine. The patient slept 6 hours and woke up, luckily. The analysis showed it had phenazepam. Phenazepam was not on the market yet. So it has a depressant. It's claimed to be cathinone, but had depressant. And luckily, he didn't take it with alcohol, otherwise respiratory depression and death. I know it's one case, but it might happen more, and it's an avoidable death.
But the point being, though, is you wouldn't have the illegal market creating something new if you didn't have prohibition.
True.
You would have a controlled market, so that
yes,
possibly wouldn't happen. The problem that I think the problem is from the illegal market, you never really know what you're going to take.
Yeah.
If you have a legal market, at least you know what you're going to take. But you still have a similar problem. There's an awful lot of psychological damage that is done from taking drugs.
Yeah, true.
You give people lots of different types of mental illness that come from taking the standard drugs, let alone the newer ones. So you're never going to remove the risk entirely. But what you are actually, if you move away from prohibition, what you're actually moving to is a society that says, okay, if you want to do it, this is what you can do, this is how you can do it, and this is the safe stuff to take. Go on your head, be it.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
But is there not
regulation rather than prohibition? Yeah.
I do wonder if there is a type of drug user, when you look at I suppose the history of sort of recreational drug use, if there are a certain group of individuals that will always be seeking out something which other people haven't got high from. I don't know, pure speculation on my part, in the sense of when you look at some of the questions.
No, then they would go into the desert and peyote or something. If they were looking for that purely exploratory area, I think when I was at school, it was kind of putting banana things in the microwave and smoking those. People come up with all kinds of rubbish in order to try and get behind in a different way to someone else. But actually, if you had controlled substances which people could take freely and knew what was in them, then if you look at like moonshine during prohibition in America, it's horrible stuff. People don't know what the alcohol content, people don't know what they're drinking, and marijuana like here compared to how it is in Holland. It's of course I'm saying it's right. It's not really
you always get someone who wants to take something that no one else has taken.
Yeah, but they are going to be a small minority.
Yeah.
But you can't legislate for that.
No, exactly, you can't.
But the thing is,
there are some people who always drive within the speed limit, but there are most of us who actually always push boundaries. So there are always going to be people who do those things.
the thing is that we're not talking here about like alcohol, 1 or 2 drugs. We have 251.
Yes,
it's a lot of molecules.
But if we had the freedom to produce and use and have it in a controlled way, you would have smaller amounts of drugs because they wouldn't keep changing. So if they didn't have to keep changing the molecules, they wouldn't keep changing them because there wouldn't be any point in it.
Yeah.
Not only that, but you as the scientist behind it, could set the toxicity levels at a level safe that we can take.
Yeah.
And saying that if you take one of these pills, you might have a nice night, as recommended daily allowance of alcohol. Here's your recommended daily allowance. If you double it, you might feel a bit better. If you quadruple it, you might not.
Yes,
Yeah,
I mean,
true.
it seems these materials are only here to exploit a legal loophole, really, aren't they? They're as close as you can get to illegal drugs while still being legal. The chemists have been clever enough to try and copy the drugs, but still make them legal. So people will get the same sort of high that they would do from the illegal drugs without the risk of being prosecuted for them.
Surely you'd bypass the regulation and stuff once regulated, it would make it cheaper to produce.
And you can tax it.
You could
Actually, some are cheap to produce. Like when you buy something that has cellulose only or sugar. One sample, like we found it before, it had brown sugar inside it, so it's cheap to sell. And you're paying like for 1 or 2 grams, sometimes it's £60. When it's near to be controlled, there is sale on the website, so we get cheaper.
But then again, also, if it was regulated and not banned, that would make the cost drug cheaper, etc.
Yeah. Because
and then would also help to reduce some of the social problems, because people wouldn't necessarily have to commit crime to raise the money to actually get the drugs.
Or would it be, you know, taxed heavily and then you have a black market and then you have all of the same
tax
systems?
it in accordance to how much it affects your health and policing and doing around it.
For something that costs pennies to make, yeah, they sell it for 60 quid. Could be sold for a fiver. You still only cost pence to make, and the tax revenue then goes into health promotion, goes into awareness campaigns, lots of different things like that, in an effort to try and curtail use. I'm not suggesting that everyone should be going out there taking drugs on a regular basis.
yeah, but it's up to the individual if they know the risks.
But most people don't want to damage their health for the long term. There'll be some people who don't care, who don't think about it. But if you could find a way to stop everyone drinking alcohol today, the country would be worse off in terms of revenue, because the amount you get from alcohol from everybody who drinks it is far greater than the actual health cost. There was a study
Yeah.
again, it is.
Unless we get the electronic alcohol.
32 cents a bottle, something like that. It is the benefit to the country of people drinking beer. That doesn't matter, obviously, we don't use sense. But again, the whole, I suppose the whole argument, and again, it's not really a scientific point, but it's, you will almost certainly be better off if you find a way to give people these things and make them pay for it legally, than if you, there'll always be a black market.
Yeah, but
That black market enormously if there's a legal supply.
okay, about 10 years ago there was a non-steroidal Vioxx. It was really effective for cancer patients. It's like ibuprofen but stronger. And because of its side effects on the heart, it was withdrawn from the medicine market. And it was really beneficial as a painkiller, but just the side effects. And a lot of the cancer patients are terminally ill. This doesn't happen to drugs. Why? If we promote it the same way as the medicine, it will be a lot of issues associated.
But psychiatric drugs work differently, because there are psychiatric drugs that people are forced to take, they have no choice about it, which if you're destroyed by blood cells, which can kill you, and they have to be regularly tested to make sure that they're not dying as a result of this. So again, we have this sort of two-faced attitude, I think, with drug use. Certainly with psychiatric drugs, there is a very different attitude.
A lot of, yeah.
Nobody cares, really.
Because there's no other option. Like a lot of the epileptic patients take phenytoin or phenobarbital. There is studies phenobarbital on the long term it does leukemia. And when I used to work in a hospital, I've seen it with like 20, 30 patients. They had leukemia after chronic use of phenobarbital, but there's no other option.
But you might say that about the heart drug. You know, you're going to die otherwise. Why? They're going to force you to do it all.
It's not one complications what's happening. There is alternative.
If you don't have capacity, so you are then deemed to not be able to make that decision for yourself.
Yes. That's a whole other evening.
But yeah, I do realise that. There's some interesting things coming from the university. But if you have the capacity to make a decision, you should have the freedom to take it if you want. Sure.
I'm with you on that.
Doesn't it good for everyone?
Yeah,
no, that's why I'm differentiating between psychiatric conditions.
Yeah.
You actually have to be forced to take a medication, you have to not have capacity.
But I mean, the point is that the side effects of some drugs, which we make people have, are devastating.
Yes.
It's not just the leukemia, but a lot of psychiatric drugs have weight increase.
Yeah.
I know that sounds silly compared to leukemia, but it's devastating.
It's not for the people who it affects.
Yeah. And you know, a lot of those. Again, we're getting into kind of a completely different
Yes,
areas.
but if I'm promoting the legal high as a healthcare professional, and some some side effects happen from it or adverse effect, especially if it was like myocardial infarction or this, the consequence will be really bad on the healthcare professional. Because
however, if as a healthcare professional, if you are promoting a medication that you know has side effects,
there is enough studies on it. This doesn't have enough studies. If we did enough studies, fair enough.
But the thing with going back to the studies, I'm not necessarily talking about legal highs, I'm talking about drugs in general. But if there are enough studies are done, and you know what the consequences are,
yeah, it's fine.
You are then given the opportunity. Now with legal highs, we still go back to the same problem. We can't do the studies because every time we decide that that's illegal, it's no longer available, so you can't do the study. So going back to legalising it, or getting rid of prohibition so you can do the study, you then have the information then to put to someone and say, this is going to give you, it might give you a bit of nausea, a bit of diarrhea, I don't know, hyperandrenia or something like that. So it could actually cause you some nastiness. But the truth be told, it's your decision to take it.
Yeah, that's fair enough in this case. But a lot, like there was one, a drug was called WFOF, 5-IAI, which is an aminoindane. And most of the samples bought from the internet studies, there was no 5-IAI. There is an abstract published, the search for 5-IAI. It was not found.
I'm really interested to know how long it takes when we talk about trials and, you know, when a drug can be kind of used, say, with the side effects. Because it's really interesting in terms of alcohol, which must be one of the most tested, studied drugs, yet every week, you know, we seem to have new guidance and new advice, and it varies between different countries and that sort of thing. So how much science do we have to do to establish whether something is safe in a recreational use?
It takes a long term, but you need healthy animals, healthy volunteers, then ill volunteers. But it depends on the drug pretty much.
Presumably decades?
Not that long. Yeah.
Depends on how bad the side effects are.
Yeah.
I won't keep going on, but one thing, again, something I've been told a lot is that methadone, which is a substitute for heroin,
yeah,
is a drug which is legal, it's prescribed, but is actually far, people don't like it because it can be far more difficult to get off methadone, I've been told, than heroin.
this is true. There was 3 years ago, methadone was blamed for all the death cases of methadone. The reason was that the nurses did not know methadone, and the patient would come, what did you take? Methadone, and couldn't pronounce it, and it was not methadone.
But the actual side of it, like addiction elements of methadone, which is a legal drug if it's prescribed. And the reason that I think
the beneficial use.
we don't do sort of studies on heroin and prescribe heroin to people. They sound like
that's challenging. We're not there to do.
Because it's an illegal drug, you're not allowed to. You know, you can't really do. This is why there's a limited amount of studies on cannabis, because we're only sort of getting countries which are willing to actually allow people to use cannabis. Therefore, you can do studies on people who use cannabis. You can't do a study on someone who uses cannabis in this country because it's not legal in this country.
No. But there was a medicine based on cannabis for cancer patients in Canada. It has tetrahydrocannabinoid, and another for pain, and was effective. But in this country, no.
No.
But I think that's probably when it's going to get interesting, because things like those states in the US that have now non-criminalised it, or whatever terminology they're using, that you can legally smoke cannabis. So, and what they've done in New Zealand with essentially taking away the prohibition, haven't they?
Yeah.
So they're making sure that it's all for drugs that are clearly identified. They've taken away the prohibition. So it's things like that that might make interesting case studies for decisions like that in the future. And I think that's why people are interested to see what's going to happen.
Regulation is interesting, but people will always find something to break the rules.
That's it.
So,
There was a news story recently about Copenhagen and the cannabis trade there. And an awful lot of people died, not directly of the use of cannabis, but because people are buying and selling cannabis to make marketing. And the local authority wanted to actually produce their own cannabis and sell it. And they've been blocked from doing that at the moment. But the reason for that is it's not a drug itself, but the consequences, the social consequences of prohibition. And again, the difficulty of knowing whether, like, here's a pill, has the same effect as cannabis, take it, it's safe, take it from you're dead. We don't do that study because it's still broadly illegal to do it. Here, I mean, there are, as you say, there are places in America which are now legalising, which I think will lead to interesting studies over the next few years. But the difficulty with a lot of drugs seems to be the consequences of prohibition, as opposed to necessarily the consequences of use of the drug itself. Again.
This is a really debate, and it's difficult to decide.
But that's why it's nice to have this discussion within, people are always going to have very different viewpoints on these sort of things.
I mean, each has advantages and disadvantages, so I won't take anyone's side.
Wise decision.
But you'll be there with your machine just to check what's there.
Yeah, but like what I would say, if something is really claims that it has a certain drug, it's bad when it's a by different law, it's a counterfeit. It's not claiming what's inside.
Yeah.
So do you think the big public health issue isn't necessarily just about the altered chemical compounds that are legal, but what they're mixed with? Do you think that's a bigger issue than the actual drugs themselves, potentially?
Yeah. Because a lot of the cases, they're advertised as like one drug, like a lot of the samples, we have them pure caffeine. So that's expensive because you can buy caffeine tablets for £4. So this one.
Any other comments? I think that's probably a good place to stop, isn't it? So yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.